I'm Walter Robbie Robinson, who exists, who was, as he described, the player coach of the Spotlight team. Little things like this ultimately, cumulatively change the world. So it won't only be probably about the exposition of, child abuse in the Catholic school system in Boston, but it'll be about the world and then how you look at things and the bravery of people and journalists who go after it. The parallel story of journalism and how we're losing newspapers and how we're losing reporters who have to do the hard work. They have to do the groundwork. There's no way around it. And these guys are old timers in the best sense. They do what journalists really are supposed to do. And now there are fewer of them because they kind of don't have to. Anybody can call themselves a journalist. Those guys are the old guard. It's courageous filmmaking on Tom's part because he trusts that if he does it right and you just tell the story, it's compelling enough and the audience will come to the story. The audience will pay attention. And boy, in these screenings, people are tuned into every little moment.
In 2001, I was the editor of the Spotlight team at the Boston Globe, which is an investigative unit of one editor, player coach, and 3 other reporters. And our mission in life was to dig out important stories that had usually an effect on public policy decisions or exposed corruption in government and held public officials accountable for their actions. In the late summer of 2001, the Spotlight team at the Boston Globe began an investigation into the sexual abuse of children by Catholic priests in the Boston Archdiocese. And we published the first of our stories in early January of 2002, and in that year, we published over 800 articles about the sexual abuse of thousands of children by hundreds of priests, not just in Boston, but around the country. And as we all know, sadly, this is a story that spread literally around the world. There was one recurring story in Boston about one priest against whom there were more than 80 lawsuits for sexual abuse by children, most of whom were by then adults. And the Globe, like other news organizations, had covered the lawsuits in this case, but the church had asked the court to seal all of the files that it had to produce. And so there were no records for the newspaper to get. And we got a new, and in July of 2001, the Globe got a new editor, Marty Barron, who came from the Miami Herald. And Florida is a state where everything is public. And so the presumption of newspaper reporters and editors is that, well, if there's a public issue, then every document is, as a matter of law in Florida, public. So Marty Barron arrived in Boston, and in his very first day at the office, he raised a question about this lawsuit in which the records had been sealed. And he said, well, why don't we go to court and ask for these records? Ask that the records be unsealed because the public has a right to know. So by the end of that first day, Marty had asked our lawyer to begin preparations to ask that those records be unsealed. But what he also did that day, which was pretty extraordinary, is he called myself and Ben Bradley, who was my supervising editor, in, and he asked that the investigative team, the Spotlight team, begin an investigation into this one priest whose name was John Gagan. By the time we began to publish in January 2002, we had already confirmed that over 70 priests had abused children, that the church had made settlements to keep it quiet, and that as a result of this cover-up, which had been going on for decades, priests who had abused children were assigned to other parishes where they very often did it again to other children, and nobody was the wiser. And that was the story, and that 5-month investigation is the subject of this film, Spotlight. It's extraordinarily important, particularly in this internet-connected world, that we really understand what's happening in other countries because it so directly affects our own lives. It's extraordinarily important that we understand what happens in Washington, to the extent it's understandable at all, but that we report honestly about the divisions in our country. To have someone else portray you in a film is pretty kind of surreal, bizarre, unreal, kind of crazy. I mean, I remember going to dinner parties where people would discuss, well, who would play you in Hollywood? The first scene that I saw shot for this film with Michael Keaton in it, I almost fell off my chair because he did a perfect impersonation of me. Not just my voice and my semi-pseudo Boston accent, but my facial expressions, my gestures. He had it all down. Working with Josh Singer and Tom McCarthy has been an experience of a lifetime. I wish they were in the newspaper business. They are so good at what they do. The research and the reporting they did to write the screenplay was, to us who do reporting for a living, was breathtaking. In 2003, the Spotlight team won for the Globe the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service, which is, among all the Pulitzer Prizes that are awarded in journalism, it is the most important. It's the one that recognizes the work that had the greatest impact, larger impact. So yes, that changed our lives.
世界中を揺るがせた世紀のスクープ。
This priest molested kids in 6 different parishes over the last 30 years. Show me the church manipulated the system.
In fact, I probably shouldn't even be speaking to you.
Could I ask you a few questions?
And I don't want you coming back here.
They control everything. Your paper has the resources to take that on.
Where's the editorial responsibility in publishing records?
Where's the editorial responsibility in not publishing them?
Silence night.
Boys and girls, they don't discriminate, not when it comes to abuse. How do you say no to God, right?
I'm sorry. I knew I was gonna do this.
You're doing the same thing you guys did last time. You're dropping us.
No, I am here because I care.
They knew, and they let it happen. 2 kids.
You want to be on the right side of this.
暗闇を照らすひときわまばゆい希望の光。スポットライト、世紀のスクープ。
That we can do better.